Hello everybody, welcome back to another live stream here on Suns Digest. I'm your host, Bruce Veliz, and we got a lot to break down for the Phoenix Suns as it's just starting to heat up for the offseason with this team as they just made their head coaching hire yesterday in Jordan Ott, which we're going to talk about. But also, now that they've gotten their head coaching hire, we've heard from Suns insider John Gambadoro on the new news revolving around this Suns team. Looking forward to talking about Kevin Durant, talking about Bradley Beal, what they're trying to do, and ultimately, I'm going to be giving my thoughts on it. We're going to look at some draft prospects as well that I really like for this Suns team. We're going to be discussing just a lot of news as everything is just piling in left and right for this Suns team, and we got to break it down. So welcome back to Suns Digest. I hope you guys are having a great day. I already see our boys King Nacho is here and Big Merc are in the chat. So hey guys, how you guys doing today? Hope you guys are having a great one. Phoenix Suns #1 fan is also here. So thank you guys so much for tuning in and being here with all of us today. But once again, it's a big offseason for the Suns team. Lots of fun stuff going on with this squad, and we're going to be breaking it all down on this afternoon. So let's strap in and let's get into it. As we all know, we're going to start off with the stuff that you guys have probably heard me talk about multiple times, but we do know that the Suns did get a new head coach, and that head coach is Jordan Ott. And in my video that I did talking about Jordan Ott, I've made one talking about how he was brought in and what he can really do for this Phoenix Suns team. I also wrote an article for Bright Side of the Sun, which if you want to read that, go check that out, talking about the Phoenix Suns ultimately in Jordan Ott and why it's not such a doomsday hire that some fans are really resonating that it is. But we want to look at this report from Shams Charania. We know that the Suns hired Cleveland Cavaliers assistant Jordan Ott as their franchise new head coach. Sources tell ESPN Ott has been an assistant head coach since 2012 or 2013, he got that wrong, and has a strong background of offensive and defensive creativity, player development, and communication. We all know that Devin Booker, also from a report from Shams and Gambo, stamped this approval of signing a guy in Jordan Ott, which I think is key for the Phoenix Suns. I know a lot of people are going to gravitate to those Michigan State connections, and obviously it is a concern if everyone in the front office is from Michigan, and I definitely do agree with that sentiment, and I have a video coming out in a little bit, I think after the stream, talking about Matt Ishbia and what he talks about his plans that he wants to get started with this Phoenix Suns team and being more hands-on. And is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing for the Phoenix Suns? So definitely check out that video as that will definitely be out after the stream. But what we're going to be discussing and really talking about today is just what Jordan Ott can really bring out for the Phoenix Suns. And personally, I think he can bring a lot to this Phoenix Suns squad. Like I mentioned, Shams Charania said that he has an offensive and defensive style of play with creativity, which desperately the Suns needed. He's obviously been an assistant head coach across the league with multiple teams, starting off with the Atlanta Hawks as a video coordinator, which most assistant coaches do start out as. He was over there, then went up all the way and became an assistant head coach with the Atlanta Hawks under Mike Budenholzer. But as we all know, with the Phoenix Suns, Matt Ishbia kind of bashed on Mike Budenholzer at the end of the press conference. So if they feel very confident in this hire, I don't think that he's going to do anything like that. And Jordan Ott's resume, which we'll get into a little bit later as well as I'm keep explaining, kind of dictates that he's not going to do similar things that Mike Budenholzer may have caused, where even if he is under the tree, it is not the worst look. Then after the Hawks, he went to the Brooklyn Nets, where he was under 3 head coaches, and Steve Nash, and Jacque Vaughn, and Kenny Atkinson in his tenure there. And that's, I believe, where he had his longest tenure is with the Brooklyn Nets. After that, where you want to look at a guy in Jordan Ott is where he went to the Lakers to coach with Darvin Ham for 2 seasons, and then went just last season to work with the Cleveland Cavaliers and get them to a 64-win season alongside Johnny Bryant as an assistant head coach. So I really do like what Jordan Ott can really bring for this team, and I'll have another video coming out either later tonight, tomorrow morning, I don't know. We have a lot of videos coming out on this Phoenix Suns channel here, so if you aren't not subscribed, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all the news that's going to be coming with draft day coming up as well. I'm going to be doing some videos on some draft prospects that I really like for the Phoenix Suns team as well, and we're definitely going to be diving into all of that news as well. So definitely want to stay up to date on everything revolving around there, and we'll get into some draft guys later on in the stream as well. But a guy in Jordan Ott worked very specifically with a specific player on the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I think that's going to be something huge for the Phoenix Suns if they are able to get a piece that fits that position. And trust me, they're in the hunt for that type of piece, as reports have already come out of them wanting that skill position of a center. But that's just a little bit of a tad bit of information. But anyways, Jordan Ott, in my opinion, I think is going to be a solid head coach. And not to mention that he's worked in the summer league with multiple franchises before in the past. And he's also going to be a part of the coaching staff for Team Latvia this season, where obviously in, I don't know necessarily, I think it's FIBA. So yeah, FIBA basketball, but going to go coach with Latvia. And I think that's key for two reasons. One, coaching summer league shows that he understands young players, wants to give those young players that appreciation, that talent, and is willing to invest in those young guys, which I know a lot of Suns fans don't want to necessarily hear with the retool and stuff like that, but the Suns aren't getting some major star player back that's going to completely change the franchise and put them as a top 3 seed this season. We all realize that, right? So the Phoenix Suns this season ultimately are going to be at that position where they're going to try to get back to some good value contracts and some good value players. And I think a guy like Jordan Ott can really help out with installing those type of guys, into this type of lineup for the Phoenix Suns. And with Jordan Ott, my last thing with working with those guys that are like younger, he can also really develop them and isn't going to kind of bench them similar to a guy like Mike Budenholzer. When you talk about a guy like Jordan Ott, also when working with Team Latvia, that gives him some experience with European guys, or even, for example, some European basketball, and maybe some ways to maybe bring some of that style offensively or defensively to the Phoenix Suns. We all know Devin Booker looked fantastic in the Olympics. Maybe that's going to help him a little bit out as well in a new role with this Phoenix Suns team, as with these previous head coaches. Devin Booker has been in, once again, a sporadic amount of roles, playing point guard, playing off ball, having to be the full-on playmaker last season. Just, it's been crazy for Booker these last 2 years, and he's always been able to thrive in whatever position he's been kind of thrusted in within this lineup. But I fully think it's time for Jordan Ott and Devin Booker to really kind of understand what they want to do together in that and push forward with this team as they go on to, once again, reset a little bit, but after this reset, be able to contend with Devin Booker, Jordan Ott, and this new look Phoenix Suns organization and identity and culture. Now, that's all I'm going to say about Jordan Ott. I don't think it's much as a doomsday as a hire as everyone thinks it is. And if you want to read my article about him over on Bright Side of the Sun, definitely go check that out as well. I know you guys are talking in the chat, talking about some Spartans, Bradley Beal, talking about Michigan State. We'll get into that in a little bit when we get to the draft and stuff like that as well. Talking about players revolving around this team, John Gambadoro also had some news revolving around 2 Phoenix Suns stars. And I dropped the video already on it, but I talked about Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant reportedly is going to be working with the Phoenix Suns, as we saw from Shams Charania, to be traded from the Phoenix Suns, and unfortunately, that's what is going to happen, as the Suns have an untradeable $50 million contract in Bradley Beal that they can't move off of, as Gambo earlier stated as well, that the Suns are looking to move off of Bradley Beal's contract, but unfortunately are not going to be able to trade it because it's untradeable across the league. So you know what that means? They're going to have to try to stretch and waive him, and that has to come to an agreement with Bradley Beal. The Suns will be trying to work forward into looking to waive and stretch Bradley Beal. That obviously comes with the cost of if Bradley Beal wants to do it. If he doesn't, he's stuck on the roster and still stays in Phoenix. But even if that is not the case, then we obviously, even if they do waive and stretch him, then they're still paying $16, $19, $20 million in dead cap salary added up with Bradley Beal, Nazir Little, and EJ Liddell from their stretch and waves last season. And that takes up basically a whole roster spot of a pretty solid starter on a good NBA team, just sitting there in dead cap for the next 5 years, being unable to be touched with, played with, used in any sort of trade or anything like that. It's not like they can get off of that money. They are stuck with that money. It's not like it's like a TPE. They are stuck with that $20 million, and they have to pay that $20 million for the next 5 seasons, which definitely hinders the ability to build around Booker, and once again, put these types of stars around him with having to pay that $20 million just for Bradley Beal not being on the roster anymore. So there's a lot of complications regarding both of those things. Personally, for me, I think the Phoenix Suns are making the smart decision once again in looking to trade Kevin Durant, even though it is not the best thing for both parties, as we never got to see the full potential of a Devin Booker and Kevin Durant roster. I think the time has really come, and it's really blown up in their face, unfortunately, for the Phoenix Suns here, with seeing all of that just go in their face. So in my opinion, looking to get out of the Durant trade is the best move for this Phoenix Suns team to kind of at least get out of some salary cap hell, so then where they're not in the second apron and have to deal with repercussions, and or if they can't buy out Bradley Beal, at least have a season with Bradley Beal and then can maybe buy him out on his final year, or maybe he's eventually then tradable on his final year of his contract if he has a good season with the Suns once again, but I find that very unlikely. But I hope for Kevin Durant, once again, a guy who came to Phoenix, wanted to win a championship, and I think was one of the best fits, obviously, around Devin Booker that Devin Booker's ever had, and besides probably Chris Paul, but ultimately a guy in Kevin Durant who's played with a talented guy in Devin Booker. I feel bad that this is the way that it has to go for the Phoenix Suns here in this regard. I wish that he could have stayed. I wish they could have extended him. If there was a way to get out of the Bradley Beal contract, I feel like that would have happened, and I'm currently in the middle of doing a write-up on Bright Side of the Sun for the likelihood of every NBA team trading for Kevin Durant, for the possibility of them just like going in, and the likelihood of them, not for the fit, not for the best value, but of contract or getting back the best return, but just ultimately who is more likely to trade for Kevin Durant. And that's definitely something that you guys are going to want to check out, because it could just details every single team on should they, why, or won't they, and a lot of them are won't they. But yeah, that's basically that. With Kevin Durant, I think there are multiple options that you can really look at if you're the Phoenix Suns. We've really discussed all them on the channel, but the main ones, basically the Timberwolves, the Heat, the Spurs, the Rockets. I know the Knicks have been thrown around there on Twitter. I know Shams Charania said today on ESPN that the Knicks called about the deal for Kevin Durant, but from doing some digging around, they didn't offer Karl Anthony Towns. They would have offered Josh Hart and probably OG Anunoby, or probably a guy in Mikal Bridges, which, once again, if you're trading for Mikal, yeah, you're very happy if you're the Phoenix Suns because you get Mikal back, but just shows that the Kevin Durant trade just didn't work. And I don't necessarily know if you're trading Kevin Durant once again for the same guy that you traded him out for. That just doesn't make sense at all. So ultimately, in my opinion, I kind of think the Knicks are out of question. I don't think they'll trade OG Anunoby. The only way that they can really do it is by trading Karl Anthony Towns. And even though Karl Anthony Towns on paper, and in my opinion as well on the court, is probably the best player that you can get for a guy in a Kevin Durant trade, there are obviously some repercussions with taking back Karl Anthony Towns. One, is he going to play the power forward? Is he going to play the center? We obviously saw he has some defensive issues in the playoffs at playing that big man position. And obviously him and Devin Booker have that great relationship playing at Kentucky. They'd be a good pick and roll duo. It'd be a great offensive duo, right? Similar to him and Jalen Brunson. But the Phoenix Suns don't have those defensive players that the Knicks even have. Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, and OG Anunoby. And they definitely would not be able to get those type of players as well, because Karl Anthony Towns makes $53 million, right? And Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen, those guys aren't playing really hard defense and being scrappy guys. And no offense, when you're putting them on the trade market, they're not getting you those type of guys like a Jaden McDaniels or anything like that, because you have to attach draft capital to go and do that. And the Suns don't have any draft capital. So once again, Kevin Durant trade for Karl Anthony Towns makes sense on paper because it would be the best player you could get in return. But when you look at it in hindsight, $53 million for, I think, 3 or 4 seasons compared to Durant's $54 for 1 season. The Knicks also don't have much draft capital, and if you're trading KD for Karl Anthony Towns, you want draft capital back. So, yeah, because you want to be able to use that draft capital, hopefully in the future, to get another star to put around Devin Booker. But, yeah, I don't necessarily know. Karl Anthony Towns doesn't make sense to me. The Knicks, once again, don't really make that much sense. But to me, honestly, personally, the Timberwolves make sense. He wants to play with Anthony Edwards. That seems like a cool duo, just like on the fun side of it, like Anthony Edwards playing with his favorite player in the NBA, and Kevin Durant does fit that team. Trade going back, a little bit more difficult with the Timberwolves. Obviously, would have to probably involve Julius Randle. Naz Reid, if they did it post-July 1st, would be on the sign and trade, so it wouldn't be possible because the Suns are in the second apron, and if you are in the first apron or the second apron, and if you are an apron team, you cannot perform a sign and trade. If you're the Timberwolves, it would most likely have to be Julius Randle. And if you're getting Julius Randle back, I still think that's, once again, another fine player to put alongside Kevin Durant, arguably the second best player you'd be getting back in a Kevin Durant trade. But ultimately, when looking at a guy in Julius Randle, I think he could fit in what the Suns need, but he doesn't take them to the next step. He makes them stay relevant, makes them stay afloat, makes them feel competent and relevant, but ultimately I don't think a pairing of Devin Booker and Julius Randle is going to get this team into the championship. And maybe you hold that contract in Randle for a season or two, and then you look to move off of it. But Randle's also looking for an extension going into this next season, so you'd have to be paying him and then paying for him to what? Trade him? That doesn't make really much sense either in my eyes for a guy in Julius Randle. The two teams that make the most sense to me, if I'm the Phoenix Suns, is trying to do a deal with the Spurs or the Rockets. Now, the Rockets obviously complicate things because they're not trading Fred VanVleet. They've made that known. They're going to be renegotiating a contract with him to bring him back. So that most likely inclines that if they were going to do a deal for Kevin Durant, they'd have to trade Jalen Green. But the Suns don't want Jalen Green because the Suns already have Devin Booker, and Devin Booker and him essentially are the same role and same position. That's why it would make the most sense for the Rockets and the Suns to do a deal for Jalen Green and Devin Booker, but the Suns and Devin Booker don't want to move off each other. Therefore, that's where the kind of triangle, love pickle, whatever you want, little pickle that they're in, whatever you want to describe this a little analogy is, of this scenario puts the Rockets and the Suns in a difficult position. Now, I do believe that if they were to trade for Kevin Durant, the Suns could swuggle a deal with potentially Cam Whitmore, Jalen Green, and the 10th overall pick. Maybe you replace the 10th overall pick with a player in Jabari Smith, regardless of what the Rockets or Suns want in return. That's up to debate for the GMs to decide. But if they were to get Jalen Green back in the deal, they would obviously have to use Jalen Green as a salary. They would have to use Jalen Green in a third-team deal for Kevin Durant if this deal was to get done, because the Suns don't want Jalen Green, and that overcomplicates things, which I think makes the Rockets turn away and still stay with their constant of their team, as they like to say that they want to do this. Now, as we see this right now, the Phoenix Suns have been traded. Yep, we're getting full on stuff. The Phoenix Suns have zero interest in a Karl Anthony Towns trade per Gambo. On the live from Full Court Press per Gambo. I trust Full Court Press. They take stuff from people. Gambo says, no, they're not getting Karl Anthony Towns. He probably said that on the radio show because he didn't say it on his Twitter. But no, they are not trading Kevin Durant for Karl Anthony Towns. Suns are not doing that. So take him off the list. Take him off the list. They're not doing it. It's very complicated, like I said. But going back to the Rockets, going back to the Spurs. Spurs is the last team that I'll talk about. Oh, well, I actually have two more, actually. Spurs and the Heat. The Heat are kind of like the Rockets. They make sense for Kevin Durant if he wants to go to the East because they still want to stay relevant. And with him and Bam Adebayo, you could argue that, and Tyler Hero, you could argue that you could put a relative solid roster around him. The only complicating thing is like the contracts that they'd be sending out in a Kevin Durant trade, like a Andrew Wiggins or maybe a Nikola Jovic or a Kela, where they might want to keep and develop, or to kind of, because they're going to be pretty solid. I think Kela Wares looks amazing, and I think Wiggins kind of complements and adds that necessary defense for alongside Tyler Hero. But that's where it runs into the complications with me. I think that the Heat would rather keep Wiggins. We're not taking Terry Rozier and Duncan Robinson. Maybe he could be thrown in, but yeah, I think it's a little bit complicated with the contracts because I think they would like to keep Durant and Wiggins, and I don't see how that's going to be physically possible for them to do that deal. But last of the team that I like the most is the Spurs, not for the fact that just they probably have the best package available of assets alongside the Rockets. I think the Rockets have a little bit more proven or maybe more untapped potential in prospects that they do have available. But I do know that the San Antonio Spurs do have a lot of young talent. Devin Vassell, even though he's not the best fit, kind of similar like Jalen Green, is a little bit better than of a fit than Jalen Green, in my opinion. Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, Harrison Barnes, whatever those wings that you can obtain are pretty solid as well. And one thing talking about the San Antonio Spurs trade, which for all of you that are in the stream here, I want you to know this, that if the Suns trade for Kevin Durant before the draft, they cannot acquire Jeremy Sohan in a deal involving Devin Vassell and Harrison Barnes. The only possible trade that can get done for the draft, including the Suns, involves Devin Vassell and Harrison Barnes before the draft. Keyword, before the draft. After the draft, the Phoenix Suns can then acquire a third player in their deal because they'll either be A, in the first apron from waiving waiving Vasily Micic and Cody Martin and being able to take back more salary in a trade, or B, they will be able to acquire more money in a trade because Kevin Durant makes $54 million and compared to his $51 million contract this season. Before July 1st, which the draft is June 25th, the Suns, are still in the 2024-2025 calendar year, which means that all those trades that happen on draft day will all follow under that. Therefore, the Suns cannot acquire that. So for the people that see the people on Twitter that are posting, breaking Suns are doing this, unless it involves Harrison Barnes, Devin Vassell in the 14th pick as the three only things that the Suns can get, maybe another future first round pick, then it is not possible to be done. If it has three players and it says before the draft, it cannot get done. Regardless of what the person tells you on Twitter, it cannot be done. It cannot be done. The salary cap says no. Just letting you all know. But anyways, San Antonio Spurs, like I mentioned, that's why I think they should trade Kevin Durant after the draft, because it makes more sense. Do you need a first round pick this season? Unless you really want that 10th overall pick because you really want a piece, or you think that 10th overall pick can take you into that next step, then I don't know. But in my opinion, I don't think you necessarily need that first round pick this season. I think if you're the Phoenix Suns, you can ultimately wait on that first round pick. You can push it into the future, and you can wait to see what this team actually gets, right? You don't need that. You can make this Kevin Durant trade post-draft and not necessarily get a player back and get 2 or 3 guys that can fit around Booker because you can take on more salary. And also, if you drop below into the first apron, it just makes it even more flexible to trade some other guys on the roster. Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal. Bradley Beal, unfortunately, untradeable, not going to be getting moved. Potentially could get bought out, as we have broken down and mentioned from John Gambadoro. I do think that he can get bought out by the Phoenix Suns. But once again, with them owing Nazir Little and EJ Liddell all this money, it is very from buying them out and stretching away them last season, it's very, very difficult for the Suns to buy out Bradley Beal. They fully cannot buy out his full contract. They cannot give him the $110 million. The max they can give him is $97 million, which if you stretch and wave that would be up to about 19 per year, which would equal $22.3 million with all 3 players getting combined for the next 5 seasons. Now that's not great, but you are off the Bradley Beal contract. But the one thing that does remain with Gambo's tweet that he did say was they don't necessarily know if they can get him to accept the buyout, which raises the concern of Bradley Beal potentially being on the roster once again. Obviously, Gambo said it's the number one goal for the team to get him off the roster, and I do think they will trade Kevin Durant before they move off Bradley Beal, but that's from the reports that we've seen, but that's something to keep an eye on with the Phoenix Suns. And then talking about some other players that I think could be available via trade for the team, I do think that Ryan Dunn will be back on this squad. Devin Booker will be back on this squad. Osa Ighodaro, I do think, will be back, but I do have one caveat with that, which is if they want to get an upgrade and they're looking to trade a player like Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal and they have to use Oso as a throw-in, and they either selected someone in the draft that can play his position, or B, know they're going to sign someone in free agency or already have signed someone in free agency to fill his role, then I'm okay with it if they are in the first apron, which allowed them to do so. But if not, then I don't see Osa Ighodaro being moved. And then Nick Richards will come back on that $5 million contract, I believe is the smart deal for the Suns, as, once again, strapped in salary, you can get a quality backup big for $5 million. Might as well do it. And if you are trading Oso and you get a starting quality big, then you are pretty much okay with that. But once again, like I mentioned with Nick Richards, he maybe could get moved at the deadline, depending on how the team looks, but I think they'll bring him back. The other guys that I want to mention are Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. Those are the two that I could see really being on the market for the Phoenix Suns. I would like Royce O'Neal to be back. I think he could still play a quality role off the bench for the Phoenix Suns as a 3-and-D sharpshooter and wing. He has gone a little bit older, has lost a step a little bit defensively, but offensively was a little bit streaky. But I do believe that he can be still a very valuable piece for this Phoenix Suns team. The only thing is he is on a $10 million deal, which is very tradable for the Phoenix Suns. So if they can get an upgrade, potentially at the backup point guard, if they can't sign one in free agency or nab one in the trade, then I could see a guy like Royce O'Neal being used for that. And then Grayson Allen, once again, we have too many shooting guards already, too many scorers. They look to bring back if they look to bring back Colin Gillespie, which we haven't really talked about either, but that should be a number one priority of this team as well. They look to bring back him. He can play some backup point guard. Who knows with Tyus Jones? Who knows about Monte Morris? They're both free agents. Will they be back? If Booker's here, if Beal is still here, there's no room for Grayson Allen, I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen. And I've said this multiple times. $16.9 million. Yes, it's an ascending contract, but as we all know, the salary cap is going to continue to increase. We all know that with that being said, too, his contract will scale with the rest of them, and he's still a quality wing scorer, can be a solid catch-and-shoot guy off the dribble, play some hustle defense, right? We did see Grayson Allen multiple times throughout the season get some really high-flying blocks, and I was just like, whoa, Grayson Allen can do that? He gives you that hustle and heart. It's just, once again, the Suns have too many of this scoring guard position, and they need defensive wings, POA wings, a center, and Grayson Allen, unfortunately, because he's, once again, now in the Nusuf Nurkic role of being the highest paid contract outside of the big three, and probably the most tradable contract on the roster, besides Royce O'Neal, it makes sense for the Phoenix Suns to look and part ways with Grayson Allen. Now, I do think there'll be teams out there on the market that are interested in Grayson Allen. I do think that the value of Grayson Allen from Sun fans, even including myself, I think is a little bit too high out there, and I do think we might see a little bit of a lesser return for Grayson Allen out there. Once again, keep an eye out for Grayson Allen on draft night, potentially, because even as a second apron team, a guy like Grayson Allen, I think, is still a tradable asset and can be fitting into either teams as salary, or potentially even going to a team as a swap before they hit a second apron or a first apron in the season. I think could be really key for the Phoenix Suns. And yeah, one of the guys that I really like for Grayson Allen is Jonathan Isaac from the Orlando Magic. Orlando Magic needs shooting. I know that they could get probably some better guys than a guy like Grayson Allen out there in the market, but like an Anthony Simons or maybe even a Trey Murphy. I saw Uzi Goslin and Sam Quinn talk about that potential yesterday, hypothetical yesterday. But I do think that a team like Orlando could value a guy like Grayson Allen. The only problem is how highly do they value him, and what are they willing to give up? Because I know that there's Jonathan Isaac that interests a lot of people, including myself, defensive wing. Once again, when he was drafted, was projected to be one of the better defenders across the entire NBA. Had some injury issues, yes, but had his most healthy season last year. Hasn't really been playing that big of a role for Orlando with their rise in their wing department with guys like Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. Not even just that, and Caleb Houston and Tristan Da Silva, some of their rookies that they've drafted. I think it's time for the Magic to move off a guy in Jonathan Isaac, especially if they want to continue to get better. He's one of their tradable contracts, and maybe it's not for Grayson Allen, but I do think his time in Orlando is up, so I think that fit, and they're around the same money as well, so it does fit for the Phoenix Suns. Also, I know another guy that a lot of Suns reporters or media people or even fans have really wanted is Goga Batazde, and he's another name that I think could be really interesting for this Phoenix Suns team as well. If they wanted to get in a Grayson Allen contract, also makes half his money, so it would make sense. I don't necessarily know if we'd have to get another contract or something like that because Grayson Allen makes more money. I obviously can look at that in the future, but those are two guys that I just threw out there for Orlando that kind of makes sense. Once again, I would definitely keep my eye out on the Phoenix Suns over these next couple of weeks. Like Gamba was stated and reported, the Suns have not had contact with any team so far on the Kevin Durant front since this offseason, since they've been hiring their GM and head coach has been their main priority. Now their main mission from Shams, as we know, is to kind of talk to Kevin Durant's ownership or agent and representatives, figure out what Kevin Durant wants, kind of figure out what they want, and kind of work a mutual deal for the both of them to give them what they want. We'll see what that really transpires to for the Suns. Like I said, draft day is 20 days away, less than 3 weeks away. So there will be some definitely key things to be insightful on with this and to definitely stay attached to with the Phoenix Suns. Because in my opinion, in these 20 days, obviously we're not going to see anything, I think, during the finals, which starts tonight. From the finals when it ends, which, if we're going to be honest, probably we'll have 10 days before the draft before then, or I don't know what the schedule is, but probably around there, maybe 10, maybe a little bit less, 8. with that freedom, the Phoenix Suns will then look to explore, try to figure out the market for Durant, and really establish what's going to be happening. So it's going to be interesting what they do on that trade front. Lastly, before we sign off for a couple minutes, I will kind of get into the draft because I have seen some people talking about the draft. So once again, we'll be having some draft videos coming out for you guys on the channel. I did one on Ryan Kalkbrenner, which if you missed that, definitely go check it out. But we're going to be pumping out more of those. With the Suns being more involved in the trade news and trade front, we've been tackling that recently. But over the next couple of days, hopefully we can definitely start pumping out some of those videos for the draft front. And if there's any guys you want to see me look at for the NBA draft for the Phoenix Suns, definitely let me know down below in the comment section. But we're going to be talking about some guys that I personally like for the Suns right now real quickly. With the Suns having the 29th overall pick, we all know they got that from the Utah Jazz from doing the trade of 2031 first for the less of Utah, Cleveland, and I believe it was Minnesota. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was 3 teams. The best of, or the worst of that pick they would get in 25, 27, and 29. They ended up getting the Cavs, obviously, this season, which, and probably for the foreseeable future, as Cleveland has looked to be a solid team in the first year. But, yeah. Or in the Eastern Conference, but yeah. Personally, 29 isn't great. But we saw the Suns have some great value late in the first round and even into the early second round with Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro last season. So I do believe that with Brian Gregory, I guess, at the helm with his player expertise, that we could be, I guess, a little bit confident in this one area of the draft here, because this is where he's said to be an expert, right? If there's anything that's going to show or tell us how decent this Suns team is going to be, at least starting off, if we don't see a Kevin Durant trade before the draft, it's going to be these picks made by Brian Gregory. And there's a lot of discussion, like we mentioned, the Suns could potentially trade up into the lottery in a Durant trade, landing 14 or 10 from the Rockets or the Spurs. I even threw out there maybe if they landed 14 from San Antonio, what would it take to get 10 from Houston for 14? Because I know that Houston personally doesn't want to probably select at 10. They got a lot of other young guys. They don't need the pick necessarily. So maybe getting even 14 and then potentially using 14 to even drop back even further could be beneficial for Houston. But what type of contract would it take for Houston to give up 10? And the Suns don't really, I think, have any of those flexible contracts. Maybe a Royce O'Neal. Once again, I don't necessarily know what that would be. But when looking at those picks, if the Suns were able to trade up, I know a lot of people joked about Jace Richardson. I think he would be obviously a funny pick because he went to Michigan State, and that's obviously the main joke about it. But overall, he's a great player in general. One concern, 6 foot, little small, and all offensive. And once again, the trade talk surrounding Kevin Durant and focusing on, possibly a Devin Vassell or Jalen Green. Those are very similar to Booker, but Jace Richardson is also falling into that category, but smaller and obviously can play the point guard, but would be more of a, I guess would be a good player, but not great fit in my opinion. And if I'm the Phoenix Suns, I'm not looking for the fit there with Jace Richardson, regardless of the Michigan State connections. If I was in the lottery, I would be targeting center. And the main target I would be going after is Thomas Sorber if I were the Suns in the draft lottery. That's where if they make the Kevin Durant trade, get pick 14, I am praying they select Thomas Sorber. If you don't know, Thomas Sorber went to Georgetown University, was a freshman, so he is younger, but that gives him the potential to grow with this Suns team. A 7-footer, great scorer in the post, pretty solid rebounder as well. And the only problem with him is he had an injury last year on his foot, had to have some surgery, wasn't able to play in the combine. But besides all that, checks all the boxes of what the Phoenix Suns need in a young center that can provide really well in the pick and roll with Devin Booker, but also not only just that, the ability to grab rebounds and to develop as an offensive presence, something that the Suns have been wanting. We all know that the Suns want a center. That report came out from Matt Moore from HP Basketball, so they want to do that. Kalkbrenner, like Big Merc mentioned as well, is also someone that I talked about in another video. I really like Kalkbrenner for the Phoenix Suns. We also talked about, I think, Maxime Reynaud from Stanford could be a great pick for center as well. Offensive scoring, 7 foot, Really reminds me of Kristaps Porzingis type-esque player for the Phoenix Suns. Pretty solid interior defender. Looked really solid on the combine. They also could potentially go after another guy like Big Merc just mentioned as well, in Danny Wolf. He's another player that's going around the mid-20s, I do believe, kind of scattering all over the draft boards here. Some at the late rounds, some in the early rounds, but a solid passing big. Played with Michigan last year alongside another 7-footer. Problem with the passing is there are some turnover issues and no really great concern if his jump shot's going to be able to translate into the NBA. But from what he's shown so far at University of Michigan and at Yale, as he looked like he could be a tremendous, and I mean tremendous, scoring big if that jump shot does come into play here. And he could be a great passer, which would be fantastic for Devin Booker. We all know that. So those are some guys from the center position that I really do like for the Phoenix Suns. Like I mentioned, I think for the Suns, center is key. Kind of look at that. I already mentioned Jace. I'm not talking about Jace. But I think the Suns really need to value a center. They mentioned that they want to get one. On the trade market for Kevin Durant, there's not really an avenue to get one. In free agency, there's guys like Clint Capella, Brook Lopez, Steven Adams, Sanju Mamkelishvili, Kevon Looney, but no one that screams standout center. The only way to really identify and get that main man in this room is to strike on it in the draft. And they tried to do it with DeAndre Ayton. It didn't work to its best ability. They gave up on it with the relationships. They didn't get the best return for him. Now is the time to go out and get that center and bring him into Phoenix. And Thomas Sorber, Maxime Reynaud, Kalkbrenner, whoever it is, if they have at pick 14, or if they trade up in the lottery, or if they have a first-round pick at pick 29, please take center and please address the issue. Please. Lonzo Ball at the Phoenix as Elias. I could see Lonzo coming for Royce O'Neal if they want to do that switch, but I don't know if it really benefits Chicago that much. Only if they're looking to get off of Lonzo's contract, but I feel like they get better offers than that. Lonzo also would be a solid fit around Booker, but the question of the uncertainty of availability, once again, raises a big concern for me with Phoenix, because you saw everybody on Phoenix get injured last year, and Lonzo Ball hasn't been able to stay consistently healthy over the last couple of years, so that would raise an issue with me a little bit. But we talked about the draft, we talked about some trades, we talked about Jordan Ott. I think that's basically what we wanted to get through with today here on this video here on Suns Digest. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, showing your support, and being here on the channel. Once again, on these Thursdays, we break down this Phoenix Suns team and analyze everything that has been going on. Today, it was a busy week, obviously, with these rumors, with Jordan Ott getting hired, and with the Suns actually now really starting to work with what they're going to do with their roster and really figuring some things out. So there's going to be a lot of information coming out as well that we're going to be breaking down here for this Phoenix Suns team. So if you want to stay up to date, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Let us know what you want to see on the channel. Who do you want to see for these draft videos? Comment them down below. We will be pumping those out in the next couple of days. And next week, I believe we will have a special guest once back on Suns Digest here with me. So make sure to stay tuned for that as well. You guys have been fantastic hanging out with me tonight. Thank you guys for coming in here. Really do appreciate it. Make sure to stay tuned on the channel. Once again, there'll be a video coming out at 7 o'clock, I do believe, talking about Matt Ishbia's new plans with taking more control of the roster. Is that a big concern for the Suns? Definitely check that one out. I'll be having a video talking about the real reason why they're hiring Jordan Ott. And then we got to get into those KD rumors. As Sean Serrani said, they called about KD last year. Or not last year at the trade deadline. But also, Gambo said no to Karl Anthony Towns. The Suns don't want him. Lots of stuff to break down for the channel. Those videos will be coming out for you guys. Once again, thank you for tuning in, hanging out, and being here from everyone in the channel and the chat today. Didn't really get to look at much at the chat, so I'm sorry about that. Kind of went on a ramble. When there's a lot of topics, a lot of stuff like that, it's a little bit harder for me to kind of do all this multitasking, but thank you for being here. Thank you for giving your thoughts. Thank you for you guys for having your conversations. King Nacho, Big Merc, Phoenix Suns #1 fan, Johnny Ray Lopez, Tim Ruiz, Andrew Dang. Who else was in here? Anyone else? Elias, Lucky, thank you. Thank you. Suns Fever, thank you. Thank you guys for being here, Nacho. Appreciate you all. Once again, enjoy the channel. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Share Suns Digest to all your friends and family that do enjoy the Phoenix Suns as well. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your night, and go Phoenix Suns.